Hello there, this here is the second segment, which takes place from July of last year to early September of last year. Anyhow, sit back, relax, and listen. The first thing I noticed about the processing facility was that there was no air conditioning. Initially I thought that it was a temperature-activated AC system, but no, the building itself had no working air conditioning at the time, resulting in every possible door being propped open in an attempt to ventilate the area. After arriving at the processing facility, turning over electronics, and lining up, all of us were ordered to go through urinalysis, height and weight, and other basic shit. The last room we visited was the stock room. We were each given a bag in which to carry what was being given to us: clothing, deodorant, shoes, you name it. Once that was done, we were all ordered to strip and change into clothing that we were provided. Everything else in our possession that wasn't documentation we had to ship back home. I know this sounds insanely absurd to say, but the first week or so of basic training felt a lot like summer camp, although it was obviously a militaristic version. After being given the basic shit, each person was given the sea bag in which to carry all that was given. While everyone else was still arriving and being taken through the same process as the rest of us, we were ordered to stand in formation. Since this was occurring at what I assumed was 1 in the morning in a facility with no AC, most of us were sweating just from standing still. There was one guy who passed out from the heat, which resulted in an ambulance arriving, but we later learned it was due to him being dehydrated rather than overheated. A little over 2 hours later, we were split off into large groups and given division numbers that we would be under for the rest of our time there. I fell under Division 282. A petty officer approached us and ordered us to follow her back to the ship, which is where we would be staying until our indoctrination period was complete. For the purpose of this segment, I'll do my best to summarize the 8 weeks I spent in Illinois. We were kept at the processing facility for a little over a week in the Pearl Harbor building, known locally as Ship 1. The Pearl was designed to house brand new recruits until they were to move into a more permanent location farther away. For the first week, we did essentially nothing but stamp our name into each of our own belongings, since this time was our processing time. This period was dubbed P-Days. Some of us still had difficulty adjusting to being told what to do at every given moment of the day. Others had already quit. Truth be told, there were several times that I myself wanted to go back home during this first week, but I pressed on, as I refused to return home a quitter. For the first few days of week 1, we were looked after by a different petty officer every day. Each was different in terms of personality, but none of them were overbearing. Near the end of the first week, we finally met our RDCs, the ones who would be in charge of us for the remainder of our time in Great Lakes. At the time, I would call them strict but fair. Looking back now, I almost miss them for some odd reason. The last thing we did in week 1 was receive our NWUs, which most of you might know better as that blue-colored camouflage uniform. Putting on a uniform with your last name on it is an extremely unique feeling. Seeing my last name on my uniform as I put it on for the very first time caused me to feel immense pride, almost as if I accomplished something significant, like contributing to the cure for cancer. Following the first week, our division moved out of the processing facility and into our new home 1.5 miles away, that being the Marvin Shields, known locally as Ship 13. For the following 6 weeks, we were taught and tested on everything deemed important to know as a sailor, ranging from firefighting to damage control, as well as standard militaristic shit such as drills and inspections. Every once in a while during those 6 weeks, we went through a mandatory portion of training, where failing would mean being moved out of your division and into another one that was a week or 2 behind in terms of time spent in Great Lakes. Sometimes this mandatory training would be something mental, such as an exam designed to test us for ship knowledge and other material. Other times it would be something physical, such as being tear-gassed in the confidence chamber. Yes, you heard that right, being tear-gassed was part of training. I can somewhat recall what it felt like, so I might be a bit inaccurate with my description. Imagine breathing normally, like you are doing right now. Now imagine that suddenly you're not taking in oxygen anymore. Your lungs can still move, but no matter how hard you inhale, oxygen is not coming in. While this is happening, your eyes become irritated and start to sting. While that is also happening, the inside of your nose and throat begins to burn, as if a fire erupted in your very skull. Now while all of that is going on, try to say your name. That's basically what happens in the confidence chamber. Was it shitty? Yes, but it lasts less than 3 minutes. As long as nobody in your division has a medical emergency that's triggered by gas. All the training we completed was done so in preparation for the final stage of Great Lakes, which would test everything we had been trained for. This stage was called Battle Stations. Legally speaking, I am not allowed to talk about what happens in battle stations, so all I will say is that it lasts a decent while. After completing battle stations, we were now considered sailors rather than recruits. What followed next was the capping ceremony, where each of us were given a Navy baseball cap by our RDCs, followed by a handshake for congratulation. That might sound silly to you, but at the time it meant the world to us. For once, we were seen as equals rather than trash. To be praised by the source of your stress after so long was an incredibly liberating feeling, like being released from prison. That isn't to say that our RDCs were assholes, because they absolutely weren't. Looking back now, I have nothing but respect for them on account of how overworked they actually are, to the point that they see us more than they see their own families. The last thing we had to go through was graduation. Yes, that's my division. Seeing so many civilians in a single place reminded me that the outside world still existed. Although being in a dress white uniform is a total fucking nightmare on account of how easily it's wrinkled or stained, we were met with resounding applause. I saw my parents for the first time in nearly 2 months, and noticed how proud they were. For the first time since entering Great Lakes, I was overjoyed. I didn't think it would get any easier after all that happened. Judging by my wording, you can tell I was wrong. That's all for now.